Hello, budding authors. This is Albertine again, and in this video, I will be addressing a concern from one of our budding authors who said that sometimes she feels like she is giving too many details. Now, the book that she's writing, I know a little bit about what the book is about. It's a personal experience from a particular time in her life, so it's autobiographical, and it's the kind of book where it gets personal, probably more than another kind of book that you're writing. So it's understandable that she might feel sometimes like, oh my God, am I saying too much? Or am I giving too many details? But I would say about that especially if you're writing autobiographical, transparency is a must. You don't want to write a book about your life and then don't share your life. It's opening up. So, and then I would also say to be honest about why you feel like you're sharing too many details. Are you concerned about when people read it, what they'll think about you, what they'll say about you, if they'll start to look at you differently, feel differently about you? Oh, I thought you was, is that at the root of your concern about sharing too many details? If those are the issues that are at the root of that concern, then I would say ignore that. Because for one thing, those people who may think less of you or feel like, oh, you're not as what I thought you were, or who may look at you differently, change their attitude towards you, not for the better, guess what? Those people are not your readers. Those people may buy your book and read it, but those people are not your intended audience. Those people are not the ones God had in mind, more than likely, when he led you to write this book. So do not allow fear of or concern about what anybody will think about you be the reason why you hold back when you write your book. You got one shot to write each book. And for many of you, this book that you're writing, your first book, who knows if it's not your only book. So you don't want your first book or your only book or any book, no matter how many you end up writing, I'm hot, to be something that you hold back on, especially out of fear of what anybody will say to you about you or how they would feel about you afterwards. The next thing I would say is that, especially for new writers, as you begin to write, one thing that you're going to discover is your writing style. For some people, their writing style and their style of communication when they're in person is the same. I'm one of those people. If you're talking to me in person and then you pick up one of my books and read it, you're not going to feel a whole lot of difference in how I'm communicating. That's okay. And it's also okay if you are one way in person and then when you write, you tend to be show another side of yourself. Like if you in person are more quiet, more soft-spoken, maybe even shy, but then your boldness comes out, or more assertiveness comes out, or whatever comes out when you're writing, that's okay too. So as you're writing, especially as a new writer, you're going to discover your style of writing. And it could be that your style of writing is one where you are good at giving details, where you're able to paint pictures. That's a gift. That's a beautiful gift to have, where you will be able to use your words to allow people when they read that they may feel like they're standing in the corner of a room watching it all happen. They can hear the sounds, they can see, they can imagine, they can picture it because of the details that you share, even details about how you felt at the time. If you are gifted in writing and communicating that, please do that in your book, because that's going to be excellent reading for your readers. I had somebody read an excerpt of Empty Womb. I had several people read excerpts, and one of the feedbacks that I got from one of the young ladies was, she said, I don't know if you meant to do it like this, but while I was reading, I felt more like I was reading like you were having a conversation than I felt like you were like more. She said it didn't feel as formal. but it felt more like a conversation that you were having with the readers. It didn't feel formal. I said, that's exactly how I want it to feel. I don't want my book to feel formal. I want my readers to feel like when they read my book that I am talking directly to them. I don't want them to feel like they're reading a manual, a textbook, or like they read something I went and copied and pasted, an instructional something. I don't want them to feel that way. I want them to feel like I am talking directly to them. So you want people to be able to feel what you felt in the moment, see what you are describing, feel as if they are inserted into that scene. Everybody can't write like that. So if your concern is about sharing too many details, you don't want to shut that down, because that you could be choking out part of your gift and how God has anointed you to communicate in writing. I had somebody tell me one time, I was describing to them very painfully, tearfully, how I was feeling in a situation. And she said when I got done, she was saying that that's why she enjoyed listening to me talk, because I leave no stone unturned. She said, when you describe things, you leave no questions unanswered. You leave it all it's like you leave it all on the stage. There's no question about how you felt, because you are so able to describe how you feel. And everybody doesn't have that. And that's the beauty of the gift of poetry. That's the beauty of the gift of writing. That's the beauty of the gift of spoken word. Any gift that has to do with us expressing ourselves verbally in writing, with using our words, it's a gift that should not be stifled, because everybody doesn't have it. I've had people read my poetry and say, how do you do that? That's exactly how I feel, but I didn't know how to say it. And then I can look at the paper and see all the same English words that we all use, but I have the gift of putting those words together in a way that expresses exactly how we tend to feel. But not everybody, even though we all feel these things, not everybody is able to express those feelings. So I'm really more wanting to encourage you to go with the flow of your ability to give details as you write. It's a gift of mine, and it could be that it's a gift of yours. Now, depending on the details, you will feel somewhat exposed. You will feel vulnerable. You will feel like you out there. You will feel naked. I felt naked. I felt like God stripped me naked when I first started writing poetry, and it's like he told all my secrets. I just like, you just stripped me naked in front of the whole world. And even though nobody was looking at me, even before people started to read my poetry, I felt like I was naked and exposed to the whole world, because he just exposed me, is how I felt. So it's normal to, even when you're sharing something of an autobiographical nature, going into a part of your life where you made a misjudgment, you made a mistake, you entered into a relationship that you thought was of God, that you thought was the right thing, and turned out that it wasn't, or you thought you had met the love of your life, and maybe he turned out to be abusive, or just whatever the situation is. You're going into a chapter of your life that you may be just now, or just for the first time, openly talking about and sharing it. And for goodness sake, now you're doing it in a book on top of that. So it's normal to feel exposed and vulnerable to everything, to everybody who will read it. I remember when I first started writing the poems that are in intimate things. I mean, like I said, I felt like God was just telling my secrets to the whole world. And it was something about wanting to hide, but needing to share at the same time. And you may be feeling that, while you're feeling like, am I sharing too many details? And then you may also feel at the same time like, but I have to say this. Somebody needs this. And that's the beauty of where you are. It really is. It's kind of tormenting, and it's like, it's exciting and it's scary at the same time. And, but you just don't lose sight of that you have God in you, and that he's, like I said in the previous video, he's your writing partner. So he's not going to let you, go so far out that he can't get glory from you. You know what I'm saying? So, but I understand the feeling of, did I say too much, and how they're going to look at me now? And are they going to think something, about me that's not true or whatever? And I remember when, even my closest friend at the time, when I would write a new poem, and I had to let somebody read it. I just couldn't. I don't understand people who write poetry and then you just tuck it away. I don't understand it because God didn't give me that luxury. When I wrote my poems, I had to share them because it was like, I don't know if there was some validation I needed or what, but I wanted to hide them, but I couldn't. I had to share them. And, 8 years later, 9 years later, I'm seeing, what God said to me about the poems, especially in intimate things, all of my romantic poems, is that he was going to use that book, those poems, to bless marriages. And 9 years later, it's almost like the book has started to experience a revival, where new people are being interested in it. And one young lady bought 2 copies, one for her, one for somebody else, and plans to buy more copies and, send people to my website to buy, because just from her reading the first 2 pages with her husband, she saw it as something that she wants to share with other couples. So, but it started out with me feeling like I was telling too much of my business. I was saying too much. I was a church girl. I was married to a minister. I was over the youth. And the circumstance behind me writing the poems and intimate things, it didn't match up with who I was in church. So I just want you to know that it's okay that you have that concern, but it's also okay. And please don't let that concern stop you. Okay. Said a lot to say that, it's okay. It's normal to feel that way. And I've been there, so I know exactly how you feel, but you're going to have to share what God gives you to share, and you're going to have to do it the way he told you to do it. And it's important if you're writing, and this is for anybody, I'm kind of addressing the person who asked the question and everybody else too, okay? So it's important if you're writing about a relationship, that you do share how you felt. It's important to share what your frame of mind was leading up to that. And I think a lot of people don't catch that. They just get right to the nitty gritty of the story. But if you back up a few steps and share what was going on in your life, what your belief system was at the time and where you were. Sometimes in our belief system, we reach a point of frustration, or it's important to go back and grasp that and write about that and let that be kind of what you kind of push forward off of, because that's going to help your readers also. It's all about the relatability. You don't want to just be sketchy, but just slow down and go back. And this may be something that you haven't even thought about, but once you start writing, it'll come back to you, and it's going to be important for you to add that into your book. You're going to be pulling back veils. You're going to be pulling back curtains. You're going to be pulling back covers. So there's some things that may even be hidden to you right now, things because you haven't thought about them. But as you begin to write, then you'll remember, I remember I was thinking like this, and this had just happened, and I remember, and the next thing I knew, so you want to put that in your book. Those are details that are very important that your readers are going to be able to gain a lot from and receive more from you, just from understanding where you were. Because there's a lot of questions are, well, how did they do that? I don't even understand how you could do something like that. But when you go back and you talk about, this is the frame of mind I was in just before I stepped into this season of my life, or this relationship, or just before this happened, I remember, then that answers that question for people. It stops the critical talk. I don't understand how that could happen. Well, what made you do that? Tell them what made you do it. Those are the kind of details you want. And if those kind of details make you feel exposed, that's okay. That's normal. Because you know what? You're healing yourself. You're writing this so that somebody else can read it and get some information that can help them move forward, get healed, get over. And guess what? You're going to be getting healed, moving forward, and getting over stuff too. Things that you thought you were already over maybe. So pull back those curtains, pull back those sheets. Pull back the veil from over your heart and from your emotions, and share where you were, what you were thinking, what you were feeling. This is going to make you relatable to your readers. I don't want to read anything from anybody who sounds like they're from another planet, but then they're trying to tell me how to live on this planet. Not going to happen. If you're going to talk about relationships, let's talk about relationships, because people are out here in relationships going through all kinds of stuff. And the sad thing about a lot of us in church is a lot of us have been there, but because of the environment of church and the community of church and the I can't think of the word, culture of church, a lot of times, especially if we've been in church a while, we're a little bit older, so we kind of a little bit old school, not quite all the way new school, so we remember, you know what I'm saying, a lot of what restricted us, so you need to get beyond that, and you need to share that. Okay. You want to be relatable. You don't want to be like you over here talking over there to somebody. That's not going to help anybody. And if you're writing the book to help somebody, okay, then you can't do that. Okay. People are looking for people to be honest. People are looking for people to tell the truth. Now, this has become an issue I see sometimes, or it can be an issue in church, because sometimes you find that people have begun to learn how to be honest. And then it's like, now we don't want honesty. It's got to have a point. It's got to have a point. Let's just say it like that. You don't want to just be telling, just yakking and, keeping it real and just being 100 and living my truth and doing me and just saying, taking on all of these cliches that don't really have a point. So you don't want to ever move away from your point, and so you want to be honest, because the world is looking for honesty. And if there's something that you have experienced sitting up in church, looking good, looking saved, looking clean, smell, ain't got the smell of smoke on you no more. But then if you want to reach somebody, if you have something in you that can reach somebody, you can't reach them with churchiness. You gotta, if you can look at that young lady and tell, I know someone who went through molestation as a young girl, and she has a radar that she can look at somebody and she can say she's been molested. I have been in the room with a man who made my skin crawl. So when I look at certain men, can't say nothing to me. So what I'm saying, don't hide your experiences. Be willing to open up, and you may not get in front of the whole room and say it to everybody, but there are people who need the experience that you had. And when you write your book, you're writing your book for those people. And those people don't need you holding back. They don't need you pulling punches. They need help. They need to know they're not the only one. And if you have, and you shouldn't be writing your book yet, unless you can see yourself on the other side of it, able to look back at it and have your life lessons and have your takeaway from it, so that you can give them their takeaway and pass on your life lesson to them. So, and that may be another thing that may help you with feeling like you're oversharing, because I think sometimes if we're not all the way out of the woods, it can hinder us in being completely open, because in our own heart, we don't really know for sure if we're all the way out. So make sure you're all the way out. And once you know you're all the way out and you're ready to write the book, go for it. Okay. And that is not about glorifying mistakes you've made. It's not about, anything that has to do with, the flesh or anything like that. We are being honest about mistakes we've made. We're being honest about decisions we made, how we felt, all of those things. And then the glory goes to God for what he was able to take it and use it to do in our life, and how he used it to grow us and to stretch us and improve us and make us better. And now we have something we can pass on to somebody else. I will also say to stay within your guidelines and be true to your intention. What is your intention? What do you want to say? Why do you want to say it? And what do you want your readers to receive from it? By doing that, by staying within those guidelines, like I said in the other video, it'll keep you in line with your structure. It will keep you in line with your overall message. It will help you know when to delete, when to add, when to reword, rearrange. You may need to take something from one part of the book and it may fit somewhere else, because you're following the flow of your intention. And it won't be as hard, if you think about writing a book of what, should this go here or should this go there? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say right now? What are you trying to say in this part of the book? That answers your question. It may be tedious work at times. Writing a book is not, maybe some people can sit down and write a book in 2 or 3 days. And I don't know that I would enjoy reading that, honest to God. I don't know if I would enjoy reading a book that took no effort at all. Because that comes across, you know what I mean? So, but just stay in focus with your intention, what you want to say, why you want to say it, and what you want your readers to get from it. And that should help you with making sure that you don't add too much, or that you don't leave enough, that you don't leave something out. And some things you may find in your proofreading, going back over, some things may, even though they are true, even though they happen, they may not fit in the book. As you go back over reading, like, okay, this is true, it really happened, but it doesn't really add to my story at this point. So it's okay to take that out. You're not lying if you take out something that's unnecessary. And you will feel as you read and as you go back over, you'll feel when you read something that you added that, if I took this out, would it take away from the story? That's a good question to ask yourself. If I remove this from this page, this paragraph, would my story still be just as strong? Or would it be stronger if I took it out? Because some things may be taking away from your story. So ask yourself the question, if I removed it, would it affect the story in a negative way? If it would not, that may be fluff. That may be just unnecessary, may be true, but still unnecessary. And at the same time, everything is not going to fit in your book. But you can keep talking points. You can keep, once your book is published, I recommend having little index cards that you can write talking points on it. Because once your book is published, somebody might say, hey, so-and-so wrote a book. Come up and tell us a little bit about it. You don't want to be up there, I see, hey. You don't want to be hemming and hawing. You want to be prepared. So that will be a good time to use some of your talking points to give some highlights about things that you didn't put in the book, but that you can use to talk about the book to create interest in people, to get them to buy the book. Okay. I would also say about transparency too is that I'll just share an experience from when I was writing Empty Movement. I was letting one of my coworkers read some of it, and I'm in my 50s, she's in her 30s, and she read it, and she said, this part right here, she said, I was looking for more. It seemed like there's more that should have been said, and I was trying to figure out what really happened. So I took my reader to a certain point, and I actually felt like, that was enough, and then I went on to the next point. But as a reader and as a younger woman, reading my book, looking to me like an older motherly auntie-like figure, she got to that point where I thought I had shared enough. When she got to that point, she felt like I left her hanging. She was looking to me to give her something in her 30s. She was looking for me to fill that gap that I had left. And so that's another important point about writing and being concerned about details, is that you don't want to leave gaps that will leave your readers disappointed or frustrated or feeling like she left me hanging, or, I was looking for something else and he just dropped off and went on to the next thing. What happened here? So that's also important. And it was important to me because she expressed to me that as a younger woman, and looking at me, knowing that I was about 15, at least 20 years older than her, close to 20 years older than her, she looked at me like a mother figure or an auntie figure. I was in the age group, not that she needed a mama, but I'm in the age group of a mom or an auntie. So she was looking to receive something from me. And in that page, I didn't give it to her. So she expressed that to me, and I was glad she did. Okay. So because it took me back to that page, and I added what she needed. And then when I gave it back to her to read again, she said, okay, that's what I was looking for. Okay. And so you have to think about too that, some of us are a little bit more modest, so we think harder about saying things than other people do. But you know what? When you saying I'm writing a book because I want to help people, people need to know about this, and I want people to understand, or whatever your reason for wanting to share this part of your life, then even if you tend to be more modest in your own personality, like I said earlier about your personality may be one way, but when it's time to write, you may be something different than you are in person, then this is a part of that, you know. So you can't be all modest and afraid to say things, you know, especially when you're talking about relationships. It's rough out here. Women are out here going through all kind of stuff, making all kind of decisions, all kind of mistakes, going through all kinds of things. So if you're going to be writing a book, you can't be squeamish if you're talking about relationships in or out of the church. I don't care how you were raised. If you're not going to get off in there and be honest about what you experienced, you know what I'm saying? You were there, and then you scared to say it, that you can't do it. You can't help them, and you can't do nothing for them. So you don't want to spend that much time and money, you know, producing a book that doesn't really say anything. And that story with my coworker, who was about 20 years younger than me, that showed me something else. I had started out writing thinking that my demographic of readers would be mostly women in my age group. You know, women. So right now I'm 54, and so I was in my early 40s when I first started writing, and I just felt like my demographic of readers would be women in my age group. And over time, you know, it kind of stretched out a little bit especially when I realized that men enjoyed poetry. I didn't realize they enjoyed poetry as much as they did. And then, but to hear that from her, somebody that much younger than me, it helped me to understand that my idea of what my demographic of readers was too tight. And she wasn't the first young lady in her 30s, early to mid 30s who told me, no, don't think that you're just for the middle-aged women in church, because that's the demographic you fit into. We need what you have to say. The things that you say about relationships, things that you've learned, we need to hear you say those things, because we don't have it all together like we look like we do. And I told the one young lady, another one that was at my church, I said, I just always felt like, you know, I look at you guys in your 30s, and most of you have college degrees, and y'all got it going on, you know, you working, you making good money, you driving your cars, nice cars, you always look nice, you know, y'all travel, you know, you're doing a lot of things that, you know, I didn't do. So I just felt like, what could I say to them, you know, because they're doing so much more at their age than I was doing when I was that age. So I didn't feel like my books or anything that I had to say could really reach them, and that they could really receive much from me. And two of them, one on my job and one in my church, said, oh no, we need what you have to say. We don't have it. We go through things just like you went through things. The relationship stuff, we don't always talk about it. We're not always honest about it either. And we're going through it just like you went through it. So don't think that we don't need you. We do need you. So that helped me. So that's my last point that I would say to you, even about being transparent, about feeling like you're sharing too much, is don't assume who your readers are. Don't assume who your audience is and narrow it down to just what you can see in your familiar zone and your comfortable familiar zone. I don't even like to say comfort zone as much as anymore, but it's what's familiar, because even what's familiar isn't always comforting. The comfort zone usually isn't comfortable, but it's the familiar that we get stuck behind, you know, that we don't want to step outside of, because we're not as comfortable in our comfort zone. That's why we got stuff gnawing at us to get out of it, right? So don't assume who your readers are. Don't assume that your readers are just women your age, men your age. Don't assume that your readers are just people in church. Don't assume that a teenager can't pick up your book and get something out of it. Don't assume anything. Don't assume anything about who your readers are. Write the book that God has given you to write. Write it the way He told you to write it. Put in it what He's telling you to put in it, because you're sitting in church every week, but the people that God has led you to write this book for may not be sitting in church every week, but He can find a way to get the book into their hands and get the message to them that needs to be gotten to them through you. So trust you. Trust you. Trust your gift that God has given you, even though you're still discovering it. Trust your personality. What did I say before? When God chose you, when God decided that he wanted to say something to the world, he chose you to say it in the form of your book. It'll also open up speaking engagements, maybe videos like what I'm doing for you right now. But we are talking about this book that he has led you to write. When he wanted to say these things, he chose you to say them. He chose you, your gift, your personality, your style of communication, your style of writing. He chose all that you are to author this book. Trust his decision to choose you to write this particular book, okay? Trust that and trust him to take it where it needs to go. Some of this stuff we are writing, some of these books we are writing are being written so that they can be left on record even after we're gone. Our books are not going to die when we die. Once we're gone, we want our books to still be in print. We're not writing books just so we can sell 100 copies and say, oh, thank God, or whatever. We are leaving a legacy. We are leaving our pieces of ourselves in these books, okay? So we don't want to pull any punches on what God is telling us to do, how he's telling us to do it. Do what he told you to do. Do it how he told you to do it. And then as you go along, get some feedback here and there, but then also consider the sources when you get feedback. You know what I'm saying? So everything negative isn't bad and everything good isn't good. I'll put it like that. So you want to be honest about what's happening, honest about how you're feeling about what you're writing, and do not back off of what God is leading you to do because it's different from something that you've probably ever done.